Alrighty, welcome everyone. So just before we start, I just want to let you know Zoom has done something new. And I guess with all the security problems that they've been having, now we have to admit you in one by one into the webinar. So if you see us get distracted and clicking on things, it's just us trying to admit people into the webinar. So thank you and welcome. And as you can see, I'm going to ask you make yourselves comfortable. Don't worry what's going on in the background. We've got you all muted for now. Cameras on if you can. We'd love to see you, and we are going to be as interactive as possible today. So great to see so many of you on here. And today's topic is how to work from home with your significant other. And I'm super excited. You'll need to come a little closer there. I'm super excited to introduce my special guest today. My special guest is Greg Lavore, who is the president.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, Greg's the president of Westwood International, which is a leadership consulting company in the US. And so not only are Greg and I work partners, we are also life partners. So this is an interesting topic for us because we have had to navigate the waters of working together for a number of years, and we also work cross-border. Those of you who know me, well, most of you know me. I live in Toronto and Greg lives in Vermont. And so we have been toggling working across countries, sharing clients, and then now we've been working together 24/7 for the last several weeks. And so I'm sure many of you, if you're on this call today, you are working with a significant other. If your significant other is around, bring them on.
If you dare.
Yes, if you dare, because it's not fair that only you get to learn all this information. It's wonderful that they're going to be on as well and that they can learn the same things that you are going to be learning. Now, just before we launch, Greg, is there anything that you would like to say or introduce about yourself before we get going?
No, I think that covers it. Been here, I'm living in Vermont. I've been here for about 4 or 5 years now. Grew up in Wisconsin, went to graduate school out of Boston at Boston College, and have been doing consulting, training, and speaking for 20 plus years now, and excited to be here with Christine to share some insights and ideas that we've learned in relationships, and then also just our personal antidotes from working together.
Yeah, we'll probably share some, we'll share some of our scary stories.
Oh,
you know?
You're gonna clear it with me first?
Yeah, can we?
Okay. Like just a broad scary story. Well, we'll see.
No, we'll see.
Right,
we'll see what comes out. But maybe we should make a pact right now that if we go into scary, if we go into scary story, how will we negotiate that right now?
No, just give me a little bit of a warning.
Okay, a little bit of a warning. See, we have to negotiate while we're doing this, because otherwise we're not modeling good stuff for the rest of you. All right.
Now I'm concerned.
Maybe you should be, maybe you shouldn't. I wouldn't worry about it. All right, so working from home with your significant other, what are the things that we are going to be covering today? We are going to be covering first, the benefits of a healthy relationship. So really today's topic and conversation is geared for those of you who are in what I'd say relatively healthy relationships. We have been hearing stories and reading things about the difficulties that people have been experiencing when you don't have a healthy relationship. And so my heart goes out to those who are dealing with really severe issues such as domestic violence and domestic abuse and addictions, and people who are in relationships that are falling apart and are in the midst of trying to separate, and now they are at home together. So we won't be talking about those things, but I do want to let you know that in 2 weeks, I will be bringing on another guest speaker to cover this topic as well. And it is a marital and family therapist. So if you have questions at the end of today's session that you would like to have addressed, please let us know, type them in the chat function. And when she comes on, we'll be able to do more of a Q&A with people. So, but we're not marital and family therapists. So we are not going to be sharing, we're not going to be sharing from that perspective, but we're going to be talking about healthy relationships. And if you have a foundation of a healthy relationship, how do we bring you back to that, given the fact that our next topic is being together 24/7, and how you may be seeing some cracks in your relationship that perhaps you may not have noticed before because you weren't together so much. And then the last topic that we are going to be covering off is the 4 conditions on how you can improve your relationship. So we'll give you some tips, tools, and strategies that you can take away and implement right away. All right, so let's start with what are some of the benefits of a healthy relationship? And there are several, which is really great. Now, given the current state of what's going on with the coronavirus, isn't it good to know that when you are in a healthy relationship, this bolsters your immune system, which is what we need right now, is to be building up our immune system. And some of the ways that it does this is that when you're in a good, healthy relationship, you produce less cortisol. And cortisol is our stress hormone. So that helps to boost your immune system. The other thing it does when you're in a good relationship is it proliferates white blood cells, which also are sort of like our warriors in our blood system that help to fight off or ward infections and illness. So, hey, that's good. The other thing is we heal quicker when we're in good relationships. So if we do get sick, hopefully we're going to heal faster from that. It also helps to lower our blood pressure. Yes, I'm just going to stick with that. Helps to lower our blood pressure and we feel less pain. We also live longer when we're in great relationships. And when you're also like, so I've talked a little bit about the physical benefits of being in a healthy relationship, but also from a mental health perspective, when you have someone that you care for, you have a greater sense of purpose. And it's not just about us anymore, it's about the we. And love makes you happy. And so how does love make you happy? Well, hormonally, it makes us happy because it releases dopamine. And dopamine is the brain chemical that's associated with the pleasure or reward center of the brain. So it releases hits of dopamine. And the other thing it does is it releases hits, and I like kind of using this word, hits of oxytocin, not to be confused with Oxycontin. Now, it's kind of the same thing. Oxycontin gives you a high and makes you feel less pain. And so does oxytocin, except this is naturally occurring within our system. So when you are in a relationship, and how oxytocin is also increased is through touch. So touch the person you love because it helps to release oxytocin, which also makes us feel good. Now that's as far as the touching is going to go in this video. Okay. Now,
but if I can say one thing, there's some fascinating research out there by a gentleman named Jim Cohn, Coan. He and his research even found that gestures of friendship or of touch can lower and increase and help these things, lower blood pressure, etc. To the point where he published a paper on holding hands. And there was a hospital, actually a surgical unit in the UK that saw this research and said, I wonder if even strangers holding hands would help. And they literally went next door to an old age home, to a rehabilitation center, and asked strangers to come over and hold the hands of people getting surgery. And they found that over a 20% increase in satisfaction and results for the surgery occurred by just strangers holding hands. So even gestures of friendship can help.
Yeah, and this might be what's also leading to that sense of isolation and despair for people who are doing stay at home and are alone right now. That lack of touch to other people. It's great, like I can see you on Zoom, which is wonderful. However, we are not getting the same benefits as we do from touch. So if you are at home with somebody, touch. If you have a pet, touch. Whatever you can touch, touch. It really does make a difference. And also some really interesting research I just want to read around fitness. So if fitness buffs spent 10% of their weekly workout routine, if they just spent 10% of their weekly workout time on working on their relationship, so say 10 to 20 minutes a day instead of on their bodies, they would get 3 times the health benefits that they derive from working out alone. So having a healthy relationship and working out is like double threat. So fantastic from that perspective. Alrighty. So what makes a great relationship? We've been reading some research and we're going to go to emotionally intelligent relationship. Greg and I talk a lot about emotional intelligence when it comes to leadership and leadership development, but this was a really interesting key point for what makes an emotionally intelligent relationship. And it's the ability to keep negative thoughts and fears about each other from overwhelming your positive ones. And so when they looked at the ratio, just in regular context, because our brains are hardwired for danger and negativity, we tend to have many more danger receptors. So we look at the world from a perception of threat or negativity bias first. And so if we see only the negative, it tends to overwhelm us from thinking about the positives. And then that's kind of where when you fight the whole kitchen sink and everything else, the kit and caboodle comes into the arguments, because you just start thinking of everything this person's ever done to piss you off. So one of the ways to overcome that is by thinking of the positive things. Now, it's typically a 3-to-1 relationship. 3 positive thoughts are required to overcome 1 negative thought.
If I can just correct, that could be, but I think it's 3-to-1 in a business environment. It's 5-to-1 in the personal.
Finish.
Okay.
But thank you for that, dear.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Dear.
And I was going to say, and in an intimate relationship, it's 5-to-1. So you need 5 positives to overcome 1 negative. So if we think about just being at home with somebody right now and how many things can escalate so quickly where we pile on the negative thoughts, I just want you to keep in mind that 5-to-1 ratio of, wow. So if I choose to do the at-home haircut, I think it's the at-home barber challenge, where I'm going to cut my own hair, I need you to say 5 nice things about my hair to the one that says, oh, you've got interesting hair. Okay. All right. So now, given that, this is where you come into play. Pen and paper, everybody. All right. So now we're in this place where we're working together all the time, and we are 24/7. So I'd like us to take a minute to do some self-reflection and notice, what are you noticing about your emotions and behavior while you're at home? And then what are all the things that are triggering you right now? So, and when I mean triggering, I mean, it could be anything, but things such like simple things may be triggering you. Like you never noticed how often
your partner doesn't clean the sink after he does the dishes, which
was
a little trigger this morning.
Yes, something like that. How often your partner doesn't clean the sink, or how often your partner leaves socks on the floor. Yeah, thanks, Erin. So things that typically wouldn't bother you, now you're surrounded by it. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to write down all the things that are triggering you right now. I'll give you about another 30 seconds to come up with some things. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do next is type some of those things that you feel safe and comfortable into the chat function, so we can get a sense of what are some of the things that are triggering you right now. Oh, somebody was quick to the draw. I like that. So stress how to complete all urgent work in a short week. Okay, so work is stressing you out. Anything about your personal life or with your partner that's triggering you? All right, let's show me what you got. Sharing homework duties with kids. Yeah. Increased mess in the kitchen. Partner's messy and you feel like a maid. Oh, thank you. Anything else? Do you have any triggers?
Well, I've
Do
been
you like
getting a
to?
lot of cleaning lessons this week, so I can relate to that comment.
So grocery shopping, oh, for both sets of parents that you're taking care of?
Well,
Uh, any,
you'd probably be upset about doing all the meals, but you're happy that I can do all the dishes.
yeah,
So that's a fair trade.
it's a fair trade.
Okay,
Do you have
all
any
right.
triggers you'd like to share? Type in there.
Just a couple.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Now's your chance. You have an avid audience that will listen.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Oh no, I think well, I'm going to get into it right now. I'm going to talk
Okay.
about triggers, and we'll get into it.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing, everybody. Yeah, delegating tasks to the kids, doing meals and dishes, and taking care of all the fur babies. Oh, yeah, yeah. Bossy mama at home. Okay.
So let's take a look at these. And I mean, the key is there's a couple things here. Is one, when you find those triggers. So like as an example, and they can be very small. They don't need to be very big. Like today, when we came down, I did the dishes and I didn't clean out the strainer in the sink. I'm like, the strainer's supposed to catch stuff, right? That's the way I'm looking at it. But fortunately, my partner came down this morning and pointed out, I'm noticing the sink here. It's not completely clean this morning. How about we make a rule? And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, make a rule? This is not a rule for you. I can tell it's a rule for me right now. And even though it was little and it was done with a sense of humor, that criticism, I felt like, I just got that kind of little zing. And this is what I'm talking about with a trigger, like that little zing that can set you off either in a little or a big way. Now, here's why it's important to manage those. Because this morning, when I heard that, I could have said something back like, oh, you're going to make a rule for me? You don't think I'm clean enough? The key is if I don't manage the trigger, I have an opportunity, and not a very good one, to escalate the issue right away. Like I would just raise my voice a little bit, or I can make a little bit of a cutting comment back, and then all of a sudden it could be off to the races. And so managing the trigger is really important. Now here's the first part, being aware that it happened. A lot of times, 10, 15 years ago, I could get triggered and be upset or angry or troubled and not even know it for 2 or 3 hours. Or at the end of the day when I'm driving home, I would say, wow, I feel really tense. And when I think about it, I can say, wow, it goes all the way back to 10 a.m., that 10 a.m. meeting. It would take me hours sometimes to figure out that I had tension or frustration going on. Fortunately this morning with the sink comment, I knew it right away. So the key is, first of all, to notice where those triggers show up for you physically and to be aware of it right away. And when I'm talking right away, getting it to a point where it's minutes or seconds. Because literally it can only take a fraction of a second to escalate things. Because once you can notice what's happening in your body, the key is to come back to the moment. And when I say the moment, and here's one of the tips that'll be helpful for you, is go sensory, sensory. So for me, one of my things is as soon as I notice that I've gotten triggered, the normal reaction would be I would go to my head and my thought and like, ooh, who are you to criticize me? Or I noticed you being, not so clean in some other places, right? And I could come back. I get to the head and I start thinking crazy stories. But I say go sensory, just come back to the moment in a sensory perspective. So what I'll do is I'll feel my feet on the floor, right? So that I can just get into my physical senses, because the moment you can come back to your physical, you're now in the moment and getting out of the crazy stories that'll spin up and probably make the situation worse. Then next, after whatever your physical is, and without going too far into this, if you don't know whether you're more auditory or whether you're more visual or more kinesthetic, it would be good for you to figure that out. What do you tune into more? Do you tune into sounds more? Do you turn into the physical more? Do you tune into the visual more? because whenever you get triggered, you'll want to use that dominant channel to come back to the moment. So just think about what it is for you. So I tend to be quite physical. So feeling my feet on the ground is a good one. If you're auditory, like I'll know people when I'm coaching them, I'll ask them to coach, if you get triggered in a meeting or get triggered in a conversation, just notice the tone of voice of the other person. Not judge it, but just notice it. Like that could be a good tone. Or if you're visual, notice people's eyes. Or notice their clothes, or notice the colors in the room, right? But pick something that can bring you back to the senses so that it gets you out of your head and gets you out of the spin up. So asking questions is powerful here. As soon as you notice it and you're aware of it, you see it in your body, you come back to the moment, and you can ask yourself a question like, what do my feet feel like on the floor? Let me just listen for what are the tones of voices in the room? Or let me just notice what people are wearing. What are people wearing? Right? Ask yourself a question to bring you back and get you grounded. Now, this is the key that's really important when I talk about match the energy or match the emotion. After you get grounded, you're literally taking a step back from that trigger, and you can now look back on it and say, look, do I have a right to be angry here or upset? Or is it wise for me to be angry and upset? Maybe I have a right to, but is it even wise for me to do it? Right? And then you can match the energy that you have in a proper way with the situation. Right? Because my goal today was to get a lot of work done and be in connection with Christine. If I get triggered right there at the sink, I could throw the whole day out the window. Right? Because I could mismatch my energy and emotion or my reaction to really what I want. Even if I think I have a right or it's fair, right? I can still throw the whole day out the window. So knowing these triggers and then finding a way to come back to the moment, and that may be through asking some key questions of yourself and of your partner so you can match properly, is a fantastic skill. And it's really, really important. Now, let me just give you, this is kind of a list of different activities or tools or things that we'll often do with clients to help come back to the moment. And really, it's being aware of the trigger, intercepting it, and then doing something to change it so that you can be in control versus being in sometimes what I call default mode, right? Default meaning I get triggered this morning, someone's critical of me, I'm going to get upset, I'm going to defensive and fight back, and I'm not paying attention to what I want or what I need or what I want out of the day. I'm just going to be on default defensiveness and then make a mess, right? So, wow, I could stop that whole chain if I wanted to. If I practiced enough to be aware as soon as the trigger showed up, and I could pick it up before it even is expressed in the external world, and then ask a couple key questions, and then while I'm step back and observing, wow, what does this moment call for? And really, this morning, I think I joked back with you, didn't I?
You did.
I made kind of like a funny joke about, well, I think there's some other rules we can set up here too. And I kind of just made the point, but with humor,
Yes.
Which was a lot different than if I had been caught in my default. Now, I mentioned coming back to the sensory moment, right? Physical, auditory, visual. That's one way to interrupt. On this sheet, 1 minute moments are other tools that you could potentially use to come back to the moment or to help you get out of that triggered state. And I'll just mention a couple of them. We don't have time for all of them. But if you look at tool 11, as you advance, one sensory question might be enough for you. But if a rule is easier for you to follow, when you get triggered, just do 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 things you can look at, 3 things you can feel, 2 things you can listen to, and potentially 1 you can smell. All right. So smell and taste is usually not as helpful in these scenarios. That's why smell is 1. But you can usually see something, feel something, or listen to something. So just go 4, 3, 2, or 4, 3, 2, 1 if you can do it. That'll really ground you in the senses. Look at tool number 10. Tool number 10 is what's the message and the emotion. So like as an example, if I was listening to the message in my emotion this morning, oh, I'm defensive. Why am I defensive? I don't like to be criticized. I want to be accepted. All right, well, as soon as I get that message and the defensiveness, that allows me to let the defensiveness go and say, look, I really want to be connected, so I can joke back and use humor and find a way of how we could be connected and share the space. Notice, though, if I were to stay in the default of being defensive, and I got defensive and reacted, and it started a confrontation, I would literally be taking myself, because I'm in default mode, to a place that I don't want to be or go. And that's the problem with the default mode. If you get caught in default mode, you often end up in places you don't want to be. And the only way to get out of default mode is to train. So the more you practice being aware and coming back to the sensory, and then observing and moving forward in a direction that you want to go, but it's helpful for you, that practice is significant. All right. So there's some other tools here. Let me mention one more, the tense relax. If you notice certain parts of your body get tense, like you might tense up your fists, you might get like tension above the head. Sometimes people get it in their back or their shoulders. As soon as you notice that physical reaction, tense it even more and then relax it. And then tense it even more and then relax. Do that 3 times. Because the other thing is, and you'll notice this is bi-directional, it's tough to have a scattered mind when your body is calm. It's also tough to have a tense body when your mind is calm. And so if you notice one or the other getting tense or getting scattered, using the one that isn't to calm the other can often be helpful. All right. So I don't want to share too many tools or tips or techniques, because you really only need one to begin to practice and help. But hopefully out of this list and out of these different methods, you'll see some things that could be really helpful.
Okay, great. Actually, I want to come back to something over here. The number 7, smile. So what's interesting about this one, like all our tools, there's smiling and then there's smiling. You see the difference? So for those of you, I'm going to do it again. A real smile versus the that customer service smile. So practice the real smile. Otherwise, this one scares people. I really want to go with that, because the smile one seems so easy. But I tell you, when you're pissed off, you don't smile nicely. Yeah. It comes out. My team used to dub this the scary clown smile when I was at work, and I was mad, and I'd come into a meeting, I'd be like, They're all like, oh God, there's that smile. And I notice I've been doing it. We've been walking on a bicycle path here to get out during the day. And when people aren't abiding by the physical distancing, when they look up at me, I give them this smile. Like, hey, hi, get out of my way. So they kind of know I'm not happy to see them, because they're not practicing what they're supposed to be practicing. Anyway, so that's my ditty on smiling. So what's really important about what Greg's been sharing with us is just for us to notice internally what's happening with us first, because it's important for me to self-regulate before going into having any kind of conversation with my loved one. So the second of the 4 conditions is having productive conversations and what those look like. So I would say before going into any kind of conversation, one of the things we want to do is first check in with what's your emotion. And if you find that you're pretty rattled and you're going into that conversation, your tone will belie where your emotion is at. And you may have not a great start to the conversation by starting off really negatively, and all of your emotion comes out forward. So if you're starting to find that your partner has been irritating you, think of one good quality that this person has. So what I absolutely love about Greg is that even when I give him tough feedback, like the sink, there's a joke in there. His ability to bounce back and to quickly modulate when I say something, and he'll smile. He's been practicing the good smiles. And then he'll say something like, oh, so we're going to create some rules. And the way he says it is very tender and joking. So I'm like, oh, okay, I've stepped in some doo-doo on this one. And so he's trying to make this easier. So instead of me blowing, Let's look at how can we make this lighthearted and fun where I can get my needs across, but without him becoming defensive. So thinking of the one good quality, I love his sense of humor. The other thing is, if there's something that's been building for you, agree to have a time to talk about it. Because your partner may be working from home as well. They're on calls, they're on emails, they're doing their things, and then we want to talk about it right now. Right now might not work for them, and we're just escalating the conversation instead of making it helpful. So agree on a time that you can talk. All right, so now you've agreed and you're going to start this conversation. Start with the I, not you. So a couple of big words, a couple of big things. We teach this in leadership and we teach this in coaching. Always start with what I've noticed. So I've noticed that there's some food left in the strainer at the end of when the dishes are done. And I'm concerned about mice, and I'm also concerned about the smell. So what, at the end, how about, I shouldn't use the word rule. That probably wasn't very helpful. I think if I had not said, let's make up rules, I would have been in a good space. But starting with I, as opposed to, you never clean the strainer at the end of the day when you're washing dishes. What's the problem? That's not a good way to start. So starting with the I, not the you. And also complain. You can complain about something. It's the way you bring up the issue, but don't blame. And usually blame sounds like the criticisms or the judgments, like you never do this. And using the word never, you always forget to put the dishes away, or you always leave the garbage sitting there. Those kinds of things are just going to escalate the conversation. So you can share your, like, wow, it's really, like, I've noticed a really bad smell in the kitchen. I think the garbage needs to go out. Would you have time later to take the garbage out? As opposed to, why the hell's the garbage stink so badly? You're getting the same point across, but in very different ways. And be clear with what you want. So are you just saying a statement like the house stinks and hoping someone's going to do something about that? Or are you really clear with, I've noticed that the garbage is really smelling. Would you be able to take the garbage out to the dump today? Very different. I'm clear I want the garbage out, and I'm clear I'd like you to do it. Be polite. Could you please? Do you have time? Be mindful and considerate of the other person. And then also take one issue at a time. I think this is kind of where we go down the dumpsters. And this is that negativity bias. We start to pile on everything that's starting to piss us off about the other person. And it goes from one to the other. And if they respond in a defensive way, we just, oh yeah? Well, how about this? And how about that? And the conversation becomes very unproductive very quickly. So a couple of things just on this one from the person who's sharing their concern. Two things. Start with I. Try not to criticize or blame. Look at what your tone is like when you're having the conversation. The second is the whys. So using the word why. I would encourage you in conversations about things that are important, try not to use the word why. Why is very triggering. Like, why aren't the dishes done? Why are the shoes still sitting here? Why hasn't the food been put away? All that is very judgmental and critical. We hear why as an attack, which makes us defensive, and we retaliate in return. So get rid of whys when you're talking to somebody, when it's an emotional conversation. Use what instead. All right, I'm gonna go on to the next one. Now, what about the person who's listening to the person who's sharing their concerns? Let the person get everything out before we start to respond. And sometimes it's really hard to just sit and listen when someone is sharing what's on their mind, because we, again, hear it as an attack depending on how it's shared with us. And immediately our brain goes into an amygdala hijack where we want to defend back. And so give them time to share. If the issue isn't about you, and they're, I don't know, they're coming home from, or they've just gotten off a call and they're sharing with you some difficulty that they're having with their boss. Their leader is like, I don't know, there's a lot of things going on, and they get off the phone and they turn to you and say, can you believe, oh my gosh, like Jane's called me 16 times today. Like, what is her problem? Like, I'm gonna get this report done. Okay, I don't answer her right away because she's not giving me any time. And then my partner says, well, maybe you should respond quicker to Jane, and then she wouldn't be sending you so many messages. I don't want your advice. I just want you to listen to what I'm saying. So please don't provide unsolicited advice. Ask. I have to say, I really appreciate that about Greg. Sometimes when I'm going off about something, he'll say, would you be open to hearing a recommendation? I'm like, no, I haven't finished sharing how I'm feeling. He's like, okay. And but I know that later he's asked permission and then I'm okay. But if I'm not okay because I haven't finished sharing, please don't give me any advice. Show genuine interest, and that comes from please put down your technology while people are talking. And then acknowledge the person's feeling, even if you don't agree. I can't believe what a jerk so and so is. Can you believe what they did? I'm so frustrated. Wow, I can imagine that must make you feel really frustrated versus I don't know why you're getting so upset about that. Really? Like I'm listening to it, it doesn't sound like it's such a big deal. Them is like fighting words because we want to acknowledge what's happening for the person. Even if the person is mad at and upset with me about what's happening, I can acknowledge, well, I really hear that you're frustrated and that when I didn't do that, that it really frustrated you. I can take that on because that's what they're saying. I may not agree with them and why they're frustrated, but I can certainly acknowledge that it's frustrated. Quite often the struggle for us is we have a hard time moving on in conversations, especially if it's heated and we don't like conflict. We want to quickly go into problem solving, solution focus, and move out of the emotion. Until people acknowledge someone's emotion, that's empathy. And when we acknowledge the emotion, it's a lot easier to move through those conversations. And ask them what they need. So like Greg, my example with Greg, when Greg said, would you be open to hearing some advice or would you be open to hearing a recommendation? No. Okay. What do you need right now? I just need to finish yelling about this. Okay. Then he knows his job is to sit and listen. So, and if it's about you, focus on the outcome of what this person wants, not on the fact that they're blaming me. So what would be helpful? What do you need? What would help to resolve this issue? Those kinds of open-ended questions. And unless we are able to do the fundamentals that Greg had talked about earlier, getting out of our own triggers, it's I would say near impossible to focus on the other person when you feel like you're being under attack. So work on you first. And I'm sure being at home gives you lots of opportunity to practice. There's so many opportunities to practice all day long being a better person, being a better listener, and being better at giving and receiving things. And then share how you feel about the situation. So when your partner's telling you something, share how you feel about it. And then what are your needs? Yeah, okay. So when he said the comment about the rules, so are we going to be creating rules for both of us? And I went, no, just for you. And then we made a joke about it because I realized how foolish this whole rule thing is because I clean up the strainer and he doesn't. So it was being passive aggressive. So I was like, oh, okay. He just needed to say that. It was enough for me to realize, oh, I'm being a jerk with this. All right. Now I want to pause and just in the chat function, if there's any questions that you have about what we've shared so far, I want to pause and just see where people are at. Okay, so I would say it seems so far so clear. Okay, I like that. All right, I want to move on to the next part, which is the third condition. It's how to keep the most important things important. All right, we're not going to solve all of the world's problems while we're at home. And if we can come back to mindset and just think about like, what do I need right now? What is most important? And how am I just going to make it through the next couple of weeks still while we're at the stay at home? So a couple of things I want to talk about is maybe rekindle things in your relationship that you haven't had time for or we've been taking for granted, or with all of our frustration we haven't even been thinking about. Relationships and good, healthy relationships require intention. They just don't show up. There's an intentionality around them. And so one of the things I'm going to suggest is schedule some fun. Have you had fun? Are you having fun? Let's have some fun. Be intentional about your intimacy and your alone time, especially if you've got kids and other people in the house with you. Schedule date nights. And whether that means you stay upstairs or in another room from everybody else, just spend some quality time together and not talking about work, just talk about you. Learning new things together. So the longer you're in a relationship, we talked about some hormones and brain chemistry earlier in terms of oxytocin and dopamine. The longer you are with your partner, the hits of dopamine and oxytocin that you get are fewer and far between. And it's because the closer in proximity you are with someone, the more it goes back down to baseline. We don't get those hits, that euphoric, warm and fuzzy feeling anymore. Now, when you think back when you first met your partner, when they walk through the door, you were like, oh, I'm so good. Now they walk through the door and you're like, oh, what do you want? So getting us back to getting those hits, learning something together releases oxytocin. Now's a great time to get online, learn how to cook together, learn how to dance, learn how to do something together. You're home. All the time you would have spent going out, now you can invest back into your relationship. And then thinking about things also, is it really important? Is it really that important right now? So the dishes, the garbage, the socks on the floor, is it important right now? Is this going to make or break it? And then spend some quality time sharing things you appreciate about your partner. And most importantly, notice how often do you have each other's backs? So I have to say, this is one thing. My parents had a very tumultuous relationship, even though they were married till the day my father passed away. So they were married 60 plus years. And although they argued and, all sorts of other things, the one thing they always had was each other's backs. So as kids, we knew we could never go to one and one would say something that the other wouldn't support. And I have to say that was a really important quality for us, because it gave us a lot of, I would say, structure and security in a sense that I knew if my dad said no, my mom's going to say no. Like there wasn't one playing on, there wasn't good cop, bad cop in our house. And so if you find that you're starting to side with other people in the house because of your irritants with your partner, maybe just coming back to basics of having each other's backs. Because if you're not feeling the safety and the psychological safety between each other, those cracks will quickly erode the relationship. Now I'm going to put something in the chat function for you to play with. And I'm hoping that this will, oops, I need to do a chat. How do I get back to my chat? How do I chat? I got to type to you. Okay. I want to put in a link, and I'm hoping this link is going to work. Yes. If you want to click, let me know if you can click on this link. It's going to take you into an assessment from a person who has researched. I copied and
They said copy and paste. Yep.
Oh, you have to copy and paste it. Thanks, Aaron. So for others, copy and paste it. It's going to take you to a Google form. And this Google form is created by a researcher who is like one of the world-renowned researchers, has spent 30 plus years studying couples. His name is John Gottman. And so he has a 20-question assessment on how well you know your partner. And I have to say, so Greg and I took this over the weekend, because again, we're not sharing anything with you that we wouldn't do ourselves. So we shared it over the weekend, and I was surprised at the level of intimacy and depth we got into sharing some of the answers on that. I thought we knew each other pretty well, but there were some things that we shared that we didn't know about each other. And so I'm going to have you can either do it right now if you're with your significant other, or you can hang on to it and then fill it in. It'll send you what you answered back. And then when I send you the recording, I'll also send you what it means. So if you scored 10 and higher, what it means. If you scored under 10, what it means for your relationship. So that's some homework. And I would encourage you, spend some time with your significant other, sharing the results of that and just talking through that. It's a great way to start a conversation and creating that intimacy and alone time together. So one other thing I want to share is we've been asking couples, how have you been surviving being at home working together? And I think one of the most fun one that I want to share is when things get tense. One couple we know have created work avatars. So the work avatars are Cheryl and Susan. So anytime something goes wrong in the house or the work office at home, they blame Cheryl or Susan. And it kind of sounds like this. Oh my God, can you believe that Cheryl didn't clean out the sink again last night when she left work? She just left everything in the sink for someone else to do. Oh my God, I can't wait to tell HR about Cheryl. And then the other person will say, oh, did you see what Susan did? Susan yet again didn't pay any attention to the other coworkers in the house who were online and had homework to do. They just left those coworkers, weren't even managing the work that they were trying to do. What kind of leader is Susan? Wow. And so what's been really fun about this is that they can joke about what's going on without feeling the blame themselves because it's a third party. So I thought it was brilliant, lots of fun. Feel free to share and steal Susan and Cheryl and come up with your own work office names.
So this some of the research from Gottman, and it's fascinating if you have a chance to look at it. He's written multiple books and has a lot of resources out there. One thing that he's found is that the transitions are places where people get in trouble. And there's two big transitions. If we were in a regular work day, the big transition would be starting the day and going to work. And then the other big transition would be coming from work and integrating back into the home. Now, given the fact that we're together 24/7, those transitions are blurred and they're not as clear, which now creates even more of an issue. So as an example, if you're going from work to kids and kids to work, that back and forth, not being able to have clear transitions can create a big problem. So a couple things here. One, in the beginning of the day, here are some tips and ideas that we've gleaned from him that could be of help. One, start your day by just asking the other person, what do you have coming up? What's going to happen in your day? What plan can we put together? And mapping that out can be, and being able to anticipate could be a big help. Second, if anyone does get triggered, just schedule a 4-minute listening session. Look, we'll start the clock and I'll listen to you for 4 minutes. What's bothering you? What's taking place? What's happening? And note please here that yes, some of this may feel very mechanical, but I will say that being mechanical with it is better than not dealing with it at all. Right? So it may sound mechanical to say, look, it's 4 minutes, here's the clock, but it's better than not listening at all. And the more you agree to the rules, whatever rules you set up, the easier it will be to follow them and the more success you'll have. Third, this third bullet point, if there is a clear transition, i.e. you and your partner have agreed that we're going to end work by 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever that might be. If you can schedule a specific 20-minute reentry. In this reentry time, there's a couple rules that Gottman has said goes along with making this successful. One, during the reentry, the one person gets at least 10 minutes just to talk about their day, what happened, what took place. And the other person listens without criticism. And so it's a gentle reentry into the rest of the evening or the weekend or whatever may be coming up. Now, the other thing that he notes is that most conflicts in a relationship are not resolvable. So having this reentry and just being able to understand and listen is sometimes all we're going to be able to do with problems. And if we build in rituals or opportunities to do that, it will save us from most of our issues right away. And then finally, these last 2 points, like Christine was saying, plan something fun or plan your next vacation or trip and do research together. Because what they're finding is oftentimes in vacations or trips or other events that you're planning, oftentimes people get more satisfaction from the anticipation and the planning than they will from the actual event. So even if you're stuck in your house, planning something that you're going to do and researching it and talking about how you'll enjoy it, that can give you just as much joy as the event itself. And so if you do plan something, the more visual you can make it, the better. I.e. cut pictures out, print pictures out, put up Post-it notes, what have you. Those can be very, very helpful. All right.
I actually have a couple of other ideas just in terms of transitions. One of them you might find if you're, this kind of goes to more, not just for couples, but just for you. If you're finding that you're struggling because you're working at home, moving from the transition from work to home, change your clothes. So in the morning, put on work clothes. At the end of the day, go change into home clothes. So if you're wearing dress, I'm not assuming we're all wearing dress clothes, but you've got a work outfit on, at least from the waist up, you have a work outfit on. I don't know what you're wearing from the waist down, But when you're done your day, go put some sweats on or something along those lines that signal to you done. So it's not just pouring a glass of wine. It's actually, I've now transitioned into a whole different mindset. So some of those things can help as well. And then if you and your partner are on the same page, then you can physically recognize we're done our workday because I see you in your sweats. It's just a visual reminder as well what might be happening for you. Do we have anything that we want to
Well,
share from what we do?
yeah, let me think. If we have a minute, let me just share a little bit more
We
of the
do.
research or the challenges that Gottman brings up. A couple things to be aware of. Christine touched on this already. Avoid absolutes. Always, never, constantly, etc. Those are big triggers. Second, when you begin to talk about your partner, please note and avoid any character attacks. So as an example, if, the way to up the criticism I received this morning could have been, hey, Greg, you're so sloppy. You left something in the sink again, right? That sloppy is a character attack, and that ups the game. Third, pay very much attention if contempt begins to show up.
Mm.
Contempt is when you not only get frustrated with the behavior, but you're also getting frustrated with the character, and the character attacks are showing up, and you're starting to, and one of the big keys or gestures is roll your eyes. So if you roll your eyes a lot, you really, the research says you need to stop.
Yeah.
Right? And so those are some things that they show up in the research that really can begin to trigger people or make things worse. So
Yeah.
I just want to share some of that from. And if you get a chance to read some of Gottman's work or a book or two of his, there's some wonderful, very practical ideas that can be of help.
Sorry, I just stuck that right in front of your face.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
No
My
worries.
apologies. So Gottman, just a couple of things that we do that I have found to be really helpful is our connection. So in the morning, we'll start the day with what does your day look like? What are you working on today? We've also scheduled in breaks. So I'm working upstairs, Greg's working downstairs. We'll meet for lunch and we'll meet for a snack or something or go for a walk in the afternoon. Just a quick, 20-minute walk if we can. And those are our touch points during the course of the day. So connecting, asking each other what's on tap so we have an idea of, what your day panning out to be like. When we can spend time together. And then at the end of the day, we do a debrief before we go to bed. Mm-hmm. What were a couple of highlights of your day? What did you enjoy today? What were some of the challenges that you had? And this way we have the touch points, beginning and ending.
Yeah, and if you begin to practice, even if it's mechanical, it helps. If you begin to practice what worked, what did you like, what were the highlights? Because it's literally just training the brain to look at the good as well as the difficult. And as Christine mentioned, our brains are wired for danger and threats. And literally those dangers and threats will show up faster, they show up stronger, and they stay longer in your system than anything good. Mm-hmm. And so we really have to train ourselves to look at the good, experience the good, and find the good so that we can stay on track. And that's why when you look at his work and they have the ratio of 5 to 1, 5 good things to 1 in order to maintain or deepen intimacy, it's because we have to have a lot more good going on in order for relationships to grow, because the brain is triggered to look for the bad and it shows up stronger. Mm-hmm. So we really almost have to work overtime to find the good, to find what works, to find what we're thankful for. And so these little rituals and training ourselves make a big difference.
And it's amazing how much neuroscience plays into our relationships. Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about how the brain is wired. And the piece when Greg had talked about the triggers and asking yourself questions. So when we get triggered, we go into an amygdala hijack. And when we're in an amygdala hijack, what happens is we are not listening clearly. Oxygen is flowing from our brain to our limbs to prepare for fight, flight, or freeze. And because we're not listening well, and we're in an emotional state, we're not making the best decisions or choices. And we certainly aren't very clear-headed when those things are happening. So when we ask ourselves good questions, what's happening is we're actually helping our brain get out of the limbic system into the prefrontal cortex, or the executive functioning, which is where your logical thinking is happening. So all the things that we're saying is actually really rooted in neuroscience, and there is a process to help you get out of some of these things. The more you practice it, the more you see you have choice. A lot of the time we feel like we have no choice when our emotions are running high. We actually have a whole lot of choice. And if you can find that I want to come back to what we'll call the sacred pause, is right between what's noticing and what's happening in my body and breathing. In there, you start to have choices. And so if we move really quickly from what's noticing in my body to then I'm just going to yell and shout, or I'm going to let my anger, frustration take over, we're losing the ability to make good choices. So really coming back to that moment of breathing and grounding ourselves, then asking a good question helps us move out of it, so that we can come at the solution or come at the issue from a more emotionally neutral position. And that's where we want to be, is emotionally neutral with this.
Mm-hmm. So, to go back to, where we were, one thing is, and this is a great mindset that's really helpful, is if you're in the spot where you have to, like, I have to get better, I have to improve, or I have to do this, it's draining. But if you can move to want to, it will really shift your focus and energy. And so, part of what I do is I wake up and I spend time in meditation every morning, and I think about, what do I want to do today? I want to connect. I want to accomplish some things. I want to. And so even if challenges show up, having a want to attitude, to approach it, to challenge it, to notice it, to work through it, changes everything. And so I don't know if there's any questions that any of you have as we wrap up here. You're welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn or Instagram and anywhere, for more information. And we'll also stay on to answer any questions you may have as we wrap up.
So we'll take questions. And the other thing I would love, if you could type in the chat function, what's something you're taking away from today's presentation? What can you start doing as soon as you get off this call today?
Yeah, and it only takes one thing. Take one simple thing, make it small, and you have a better chance of being successful. Mm-hmm. So what's one, maybe two things that you'd want to practice?
Time for fun. Yeah, that's a good one. What's your recall on how to deal in a situation when you and your significant other have polar takes on the COVID situation? Government's action, your partner thinks, oh, is a made up problem. Ooh.
That's a biggie.
That's a biggie. Ha! Well, I'm not sure we'll be able to answer that one that quickly.
Yeah, let's set up a private session to deal with polarities in a relationship and how to deal with those big issues, because that is a challenging one.
Yeah, absolutely. Olga, we can email that one back and forth.
Yeah.
Putting into perspective transitions and routine. Great.
It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even seen research that says when couples schedule their intimacy, it's more powerful than when they let it go. So it may sound mechanical and not romantic, and I wish my partner would just use it, but even just planning it and practicing it can make a big difference.
Yeah. Great.
Yep. Words matter. Use of why. Great.
Transitions. Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, transitions are key.
And is there anything we didn't cover today that you would want to see in a future webinar, and especially when I bring on the marital and family therapist? Maybe Olga's question might be a really good one for that one. The avatars. Great.
Yeah, checkpoints in the morning. Yeah, and it's as simple as what does your day hold for you? Yeah. And then checking at the end of the day. Great.
All right.
All right.
Well, if you have any other comments, then please, you can always email us. So thank you everybody for being on today.
Thank you.
We will send the recording as well as the deck for today's presentation. And I'll also send what your results mean on your Gottman assessment. Take care, everybody. Stay healthy. Stay well.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.